In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
Welcome to Strange Bedfellows, episode 14, and I'm your host, Lori Spencer, along with my lovely and talented co-host, the one and only Rick Walker of Maverick News. Hi, Rick.
Hello.
Hello. Great to see you. Thank you for spending your Saturday night with us. We're going to have an interesting show tonight. We thought we would take a break from all the crazy current events going on in the world. Sometimes it just gets exhausting. And it's exhausting being in this business. As you were saying, Rick, tonight at the end of Maverick News, what hard work it really is for very low pay. And we do this because it's a public service. You know, I mean, tonight we're going to talk about journalism and why people get into this business and why Rick and I have devoted 35 years of our lives to this business. Obviously, we're not in it for the money, are we, Rick?
11 cents. I made 11 cents yesterday.
On Rumble.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I think I've got like 2 fans on Rumble who give $5 a month.
Oh, yeah.
Because if it wasn't for them, I'd make 11 cents too. That's what I was making until 2 very kind people decided to chip in $5 a month. So thank you for that. But we do this because it's a public service. That's why we do it. We feel like we have that responsibility to the public to tell you what happened today, what's going on this week. Of course, I don't get to see you as much these days on Maverick News on the air. I only get to join you once a week because it's hard for me to make those weeknight shows. But I've been looking forward to this all week, and you've probably been dreading it because I forced you to pull an old videotape or 2 out of storage, and
Yep.
You're going to show us some of your work from years past, years gone by.
I said no a long time ago.
Yes, you did. I know. I've been trying to talk you into this for a year, and I brought some too, so I'm going to be embarrassed right along with you, Rick Walker. We're going to show you guys some examples of our work from the past. Like I say, we've both been doing this since we were 17, 18 years old. I started when I was 17. When did you start, Rick?
Well, I didn't start. I was always involved in, media of one kind or another with student papers or whatever, always. Without really thinking about being involved in journalism, but I always was.
Yeah.
But I really didn't start working until I got out of college and university in my 20s. So
I remember a story that you told me once about you as a little kid, and that you had this kind of, I don't know, was it shortwave radio broadcasting set up in your basement? How old were you when you did that?
Maybe 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, you
I
were
had a
born to do it, Mr. Walker.
Coleco CB40 base unit.
Awesome.
Do you remember those things?
Yeah, it was a CB radio, huh?
Yeah, basically. It was like a fancy looking walkie-talkie, right?
That's great.
So I took it and I modified. I took it all apart and I made a radio station transmitter out of it. And I had a turntable and a cassette recorder and a microphone. And then I ran wires up through in the basement, so my parents didn't know what I was doing. And then I put an antenna up on the roof of the house, and I was transmitting to the whole neighborhood.
Your parents didn't know?
No.
Well, they do now.
So and
They're
then
watching tonight.
So then I thought, well, how can I broadcast like for long periods of time? So it's like a real radio station. When I have to go to school, which sucks. So I made long recordings.
Wow.
I recorded.
8-hour reel-to-reel tapes.
No, they were just cassettes. They had like you had the 120 minute ones, right? So what I did was I'd make recordings, and then I would let those run, and I would time it so that I could make references to the time, even though I wasn't there.
Amazing.
And
You thought of everything.
Yeah, and it was so silly.
Great.
And then so I had one running, and it was after school one day, and I'm out riding my bike around the street while my radio station's
You're
on.
listening to your radio station while you're riding your bike?
But so was my dad on his CB, right? So he pulls around, he's coming down the street, coming home from work, and he's listening to me on his CB. And he says, is that you on there? And like, how can you be on there and here? And I told him, because he obviously caught me, because it was illegal, right, to do that in Canada. Oh, totally. You had to have back then you had to have a license for a CB radio. Oh yeah. And you had to have a transmitter license, and there was a number that came with it. Ours was XM44 28608.
You still remember.
I do.
Amazing.
Yeah, so anyway, it was totally illegal. I was broadcasting to the neighborhood, and it was radio station RWRS, which stood for Ricky Walker's radio station.
That's so good. Oh, I love that story. I love that story.
My dad was not amused. He had me come home. He made me show him the whole setup. And, I thought, if I got in a lot of trouble, but I thought if my kid did something like that, I'd be really proud of him. I mean, it's like, how did you wire all that shit together?
No kidding.
Yeah.
I'd be so proud of my kid. So did your dad make you take the studio down, or did you get a license?
Yeah. No.
Oh,
you had to come down. You weren't supposed to do that kind of stuff. People took CBs really seriously back in the 70s. It was really serious stuff.
Big old CB radio craze.
Yeah. I used to
Smokey and the Bandit, man.
My friend across the street had a 1970-something Pinto, piece of junk.
Yeah, they were.
And he was a lot older. He was a lot older than me. And I used to go over to his house with my friends, and we'd sit in his Pinto. I was still really young, right? And he was older. He was old enough to drive. He's 16. And I was like, I don't know, like 11 or something, or 10. And we'd sit in the car and listen to the CB.
Oh, yeah, we did that.
Yeah.
We did that. That was entertainment.
Yes, that's
that's what we did for entertainment before the internet.
Yeah, that was the
CDs.
internet of the day. Yeah.
It was. Yeah, you could talk to people. That and shortwave.
Yeah, and if you could get Skip,
shortwave radio.
Did you use Skip on CB?
Mm-hmm.
You could bounce the signal off the ionosphere or whatever, the clouds, whatever. And you could talk to people really far away.
Yeah.
Even though it was like crappy signals locally.
But it was the coolest thing. We thought it was the coolest thing since sliced bread at the time.
It was.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, kids today, they don't know what they're missing.
They don't. And that's why we're doing this show tonight. Yeah. That's exactly why I wanted to do it. Not just as a stroll down memory lane for our older viewers who are going to remember some of the names that we're talking about tonight, but also to try and educate younger people who don't remember Chet Huntley, David Brinkley, Jessica Savage, Frank Reynolds, Walter Cronkite, the greats of broadcast news. Tonight, I wanted to talk about what happened to journalism, where it went so wrong, why it went so wrong, why it sucks so bad today. Rick and I are old enough to remember a time when journalism didn't suck and the TV news was actually great. And they had real journalists working at the major networks, and we only had 3. We remember a time before cable television.
Or maybe it was all a lie.
Sometimes I think about that.
And maybe we were just being fed the information because there were only 3 stations or 3 networks, and and there was no alternative.
That is possible. I mean, there was certainly government control here in the United States back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. There was a lot more government control of media than people realize.
Yeah.
Certainly, the first presidential press conferences, for example, Dwight Eisenhower was the first to do them on television, but they were not live. They had to go through the White House for censorship. And if Ike had said something in that press conference that he didn't want out there in the public, the media would edit that part out before the press conference was put on television. Same with radio. So people didn't realize it at the time. They didn't realize that their news was censored, but to some degree it was, even then.
I can only say that when I got into journalism, I did not experience any kind of editorial interference, really,
No,
to speak of.
me neither.
There were a couple of things that I didn't like that happened, but just isolated incidents. Overall, I was pretty much left alone. Change a word here, change a word there, just to clean a script up to make it more understandable.
Yeah. I
fit
would
into a
usually
time
get
slot.
good advice and editorial input from my boss.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I was very lucky to have mentors who were experienced newsmen who'd been at it for 40 years by the time I came in as a youngster. And they mentored me and showed me the secrets of good news writing, good delivery, what's essential, good communication. I mean, I was lucky enough to be mentored by some of the best. And I'm going to show you some examples of the people who mentored me and influenced me when I was a young journalist tonight, because I think you'll appreciate their standard of excellence. So I wanted to talk a little about mentors and the people who influenced us and who we learned from. There's a guy, I think I told you that when I was in Austin, Texas, I moved on from KEBC, I moved down to Texas, and I ended up at a radio station called KLBJ, which was literally owned by the family of President Lyndon Baines Johnson. Interesting story. The station was owned and purchased by Lady Bird Johnson, First Lady of the United States, while she was First Lady. And, she had gone to UT, University of Texas, majored in journalism. She was a journalist in her heart. That's what Lady Bird Johnson had always wanted to be. That's what she wanted to do. And she got to make her dream come true. Now, mind you, this was in the 1960s when it was very difficult for women to work in broadcasting and very difficult for women to get into any kind of managerial position in a broadcasting conglomerate. So, hey, when you're the vice president's wife, you can just buy it. And so she did. She bought the damn station. It was a radio and TV combo. Back then it was called KTBC, and it was KTBC radio and KTBC television. But from the earliest days of that station, which, by the way, was actively run by the Johnson family, they didn't just own it as an investment. After President Johnson left office, throughout the 1970s, 80s, and into the 90s, when I was working there, it was owned, operated, and managed and run every single day by Lady Bird Johnson herself and her daughter, Lucy Baines Johnson. And we did great, great work. And I wanted to show you a story, and I wanted to show you the man who mentored me and taught me so much of what I think I know about journalism, was a guy named Neil Spels. And Neil Spels is still around. I won't say how old he is now, but he's getting up there. Neil broke a national story that's an important story in August of 1966. Some of you will probably remember it because it took the whole world by storm and shocked everyone. The first school shooting, the first mass shooting at a school, took place at the University of Texas, my alma mater. I went to UT for a while, and that's also Neil Spelse's alma mater. But on that day, a crazed gunman went up the UT tower, and I believe he killed 15 people. But Neil Spelse can tell you a lot better than I can. Let me find this video of Neil Spelse reporting for KLBJ, which was at that time still called KTBC, and NBC picked it up at the National News Desk. You'll see Chet Huntley here introducing it. But this story, remember, Austin was a small town back then, a very small town. It was just a college town, really. And this story not only took Austin by storm and shocked everyone, but it shocked the world. Even today, it's pretty gruesome.
The time is 5:30.
David Brinkley is on vacation. I'm Chet Huntley. For an hour and a half today, the normally placid university and capital city of Austin, Texas, was held in the grip of a terror which began in killing and ended in killing. A maddened former Marine, a 24-year-old student in the architectural school named Charles Whitman, first killed his wife and mother in their home. Then he fled to the top of the university tower, a 27-story building, and from there shot to death at least 13 other people and wounded at least 31. The carnage did not end until police ended Whitman's life with several bullets. Here is a report from Neil Speltz of KTBC-TV, Austin.
A Marine veteran who was an expert marksman shot and killed 10 unsuspecting noontime strollers on the University of Texas campus today, and then he was cut down an hour and a half later by an Austin policeman. When the shooting ended, 30 others were seriously injured. And then the bodies of the alleged sniper's mother and wife were found in his apartment, both dead. The tally at this hour is 13 dead, 30 wounded, and that figure includes the death of the man police say did the shooting. The sniper, identified as 24-year-old Charles J. Whitman, started shooting from the observation deck of the 27-story tall university tower. He fell moving targets blocks away. The terror-filled 90 minutes started at 5 minutes before 12 Austin time, and it was 1:22 when policeman Ramiro Martinez shot Whitman. Victims were cut down on the west and south sides of the campus as the sniper zeroed in on his targets with unerring accuracy. Those who were felled with bullets from the high-caliber rifle were pulled to safety as soon as possible by officials and passers-by. Others crouched in terror. Heavily armed Austin police, sheriff's deputies, highway patrolmen, and Texas Rangers converged on the campus and began returning the sniper's fire. But he was well entrenched, and he had a fantastic vantage point of the entire area. Reporter Charles Ward was on the scene as the gun battle raged. He described what was happening and then interviewed a Vietnam veteran who risked his life to pull the victims to safety.
Ambulances screaming all over the city, and more sounds, more shots being fired at the tower and on the tower. On the mall, maybe an empty carton of shells. One of those who is out of breath now after running out onto the mall rescuing those who have been shot is Brian Ellison of Austin, who has been in Vietnam and has been back for 2 years. Brian, how many have you gone out to rescue?
Today, 2.
What did you have to do?
Run hard and keep low.
Did you have any trouble getting them up, or did any shots come close to you while you were out there?
No shots came close to me. Just the last one. He was dead. He was dead weight. He was a little hard to pick up, too limp. Not like someone was knocked out.
How many have you seen that are dead today?
Just one. I hope not anymore.
But many of the victims could not be moved until after the sniper was gunned down. And then the university students moved in to see what had happened. One ambulance driver was shot and critically injured trying to haul the wounded to safety. A policeman was killed as he moved in armed to try to get a sight on the sniper. A University of Texas professor was killed as he walked to class. The campus at one time looked like a battlefield. Dead people were lying on the sidewalks under 100-degree temperature, with police and others occasionally darting from cover to cover. The sniper was well armed and apparently planned a long siege. After he was cut down, police hauled out of the barricaded observation deck 2 .30-06 rifles with telescopic sights, a .357 Magnum pistol, and a shotgun. He had 2 large jugs of water and a footlocker containing food and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. What caused the man to take the lives of so many and wound so many others on a hot summer day may be found in a letter discovered by the bodies of the alleged sniper's mother and wife late this afternoon. The typed letter related Whitman's headaches and his plans to kill his mother and wife, and a grim notation on the message read, "Mother and wife, now dead, 3 a.m. His wife was a biology teacher at an Austin high school. The letter was typed last night. This is Neil Speltz reporting from Austin.
Again, Austin police now place the toll at 16 dead, including 14 shot from the campus tower. NBC News is planning a program on the murder and his possible motivations tomorrow night.
There. Now that right there was a real newsman, Neil Speltz, who is still around, still kicking it down there in Austin, Texas. But Neil Speltz won every kind of journalism award you can imagine for his reporting on the UT Tower shootings of 1966. And by the way, that tower that you just saw still stands, but it was closed to the public for 30 years. They were so afraid that a gunman might go up there and do it again, that they wouldn't let anybody up there. That was an observation deck that he was shooting from. And they just closed the damn deck for 30 years. When I was at school there, you couldn't go up in the observation tower. It was just closed to the public. But anyway, back to Neil Speltz. He heard my audition tape when he stayed at KLBJ for the rest of his career. He's still at KLBJ to this very day. He heard my audition tape, and he's the one who hired me. So here I am 30 years later after the UT Tower shootings on KLBJ radio in Austin, Texas. I was always a radio gal. I didn't do television. But here we are covering some breaking news.
It's not fair.
What?
Well, I had to show video, but you get to hide behind a microphone.
That's right. I'm hiding. But I did include some embarrassing old pictures of when I worked there. You
Fair
can see
enough.
me here at behind the mic at KLBJ. This is breaking news. You remember when the Olympic Park was bombed in Atlanta in 1996? Richard Jewell was the guy arrested for it. Turns out he was innocent, didn't do it. The FBI ruined his life for years. But anyway, that thing happened at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I just happened to be there. Usually I got off work at midnight. But I just happened to be kind of working late in the newsroom. And I heard the AP teletype machine going off in the background that there was some breaking news. And so we went live on the air with it. And we did continuous coverage. Because we were a big station, we had a big crew, we had reporters in Atlanta on the ground. And so here's a taste of how we covered a tragedy 30 years later at KLBJ. We are bringing you, I guess I should tell you, I had a different on-air name. You know, we all had different names back then. You actually worked under your name. You were
Yes,
Rick
I
Walker.
did.
They had me under all kinds of different names. So when I was at KLBJ, I was Allison Fox.
We interrupt this program for a special news report on 590 KLBJ Radio.
590 KLBJ Radio News Time 3:03. Good morning, I'm Allison Fox. We are bringing you breaking news of a massive explosion in Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta. At least one person is dead, 68 others injured during a concert. The FBI has confirmed that it was some kind of explosive device. We have unconfirmed reports that it was a pipe bomb, and now they are saying that 2 more devices have been found in that area. We now take you back to live continuous coverage of the Olympic tragedy from ABC News here on your news and information source, 590 KLBJ Radio.
We interrupt this program for a special news report on 590 KLBJ Radio.
Good morning. I'm Todd Jeffries along with Allison Fox. You're listening to live continuous coverage of a bomb blast in Atlanta, Georgia, the site of the Olympics. Joining us live now is KLBJ's Kirk Bowles, who is in Atlanta. Kurt, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, Todd.
What can you tell us? It's basically looking at all the video and listening to the sound. It looks like a zoo in that whole area. What can you talk to us about the security?
Well, apparently they're tightening security, Todd, and they're not letting anybody in the Media Press Center, which is just about a block away from the Centennial Olympic Park where the explosion went off just about 3 hours or so ago.
Kirk, how far away are you staying in your hotel from the Centennial Park?
We are north of downtown Atlanta off I-75, and by my estimation, I think we're probably about 5 miles north of there.
Boy, aren't you glad you lost your original motel room, huh?
You can be grateful for, I guess.
Now, the confusing side to the whole thing where they were going to or getting ready to have the press conference, that's the site where they're keeping all the reporters and keeping everyone out. So there's some confusion as to if this press conference is going to happen from the Olympic Committee.
Yes, police radio reported finding 2 other devices within the park. Those reports have not been confirmed outside of local police officials. The mayor is hesitant, to say the least, to confirm anything at this point, but they are evacuating everybody from that area. They have shut down the commuter rail system there in downtown Atlanta and all over the city of Atlanta. So right now there are a lot of stranded commuters and tourists right now walking the downtown streets with no way to get home.
And to catch everyone up to date, we have reports of at least 1 to 4 people dead and as many as maybe 200 people injured.
Yes.
And in fact, they were treating some people at the site of the Centennial Park for some minor injuries. And we do have a report that one person their arm was blown off. It's just a tragic sight, the whole area. They blocked, looking at some video here, the entire area is blocked off. And we have reports that they're using tear gas to clear the area as well.
Yes.
And Kurt, you've been there for a week now. And security has been a major issue.
Well, it really has, Todd. They have somewhere between 25 and 30,000 law enforcement officers, including police, National Guard, FBI, and I imagine we're going to see those numbers rise, in the coming 9-10 days left of these Olympic Games.
And Kirk, the saddest part about this is the Centennial Park area was about the only area in the whole Olympic Games that is not subject to as stringent a security measures as you find elsewhere in the Games.
That's exactly right, Allison. It's bordered by, it's fenced in, but there are several places, that you can get in, and there's no security checks whatsoever at the entrances and exits there. There are people manning officers and law enforcement authorities manning those entrances and exits, but they were never checking any of our bags until you're actually going through a venue.
To say the least, Kurt. From what we understand, tonight's explosion occurred at Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta, and they were holding a concert at that time.
Yeah, it was by Jack Mack and the Heart Attack.
Now, earlier this week, Kurt, there was a bomb threat at one of the main buildings there, where they forced the evacuation for a brief time. That turned out to be a hoax, correct?
Yes, and like I said, they've been isolated, and we almost have, I wouldn't say it's on a daily basis, Todd, but it has happened. There have been several instances of that, but we almost just kind of take it with a grain of salt, assuming they're going to be that, and maybe some false reports of that. But as you two were saying before, Centennial Olympic Park would be a great venue to place a bomb because it's open to the public, it's free, and at any different time of night. We were leaving the women's gymnastics last night well after midnight, and there were just thousands of people still in the park as there were tonight.
Right.
And anybody can go through there, so it would be a great place for a terrorist to put a bomb.
Kind of a tragic statement when you think that really is one of the only safe places, and a place where I think organizers thought they could trust people to just go out and have a good time.
Well, it really is. They have live music there. There are a lot of shops there where you can trade pins and buy paraphernalia there and souvenirs, and I will not be at all surprised if they shut that down for the duration of the games. We've been told that right now there's been no scheduled, or rather rescheduled, any of the events that they are supposed to go on as scheduled.
Yes, that's true. NBC is saying that the games will go on. No big schedule changes tomorrow. It will be interesting to see how all of these people will commute to the games without use of the commuter rail system there in Atlanta.
That's exactly right, Allison. Last night when I was coming back from the swimming venue at the Georgia Tech Aquatic Center, there was just a lot of gridlock downtown. And it was about as bad as I've ever seen, because we always, when we go to these venues, these outlying areas, we are transported by bus to the Media Transportation Mall, and from there we take our buses to our different hotels and dormitories where people are staying. And we thought it might have been due to the fact that Vice President Al Gore and his wife were in Atlanta yesterday and seeing some of the different Olympic events like the field hockey. And anytime President Clinton or Vice President Gore have been here, you can expect lengthy delays in the security checks as well as the transportation of the buses and shuttles of the media and the fans.
Carter, you've been working for the paper for quite a long time now. Take us back in time to the Munich Olympics, where we had another terrorist incident.
Well, in 1972, when the Palestinian terrorists took over, the commandos took over a dormitory where a lot of the Israeli athletes were taking, and I believe 11 of them were eventually killed in a shootout at the airport there in Munich. And we pray that something like that is not going to happen here.
Absolutely. In fact, someone was just mentioning to me, it is pure speculation at this point, but what if someone had been planning this initial bomb as kind of a smokescreen for perhaps a larger bomb, a larger event, and they had mentioned that there was some concern with the big crowds coming in for the track and field competition today.
Well, you're exactly right, Allison. That's a very scary proposition when you're talking about the largest venue here, as well as it is next door to the Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. They're right adjacent to one another, and that's where the baseball is being held. And the United States is playing Cuba Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock at that ballpark, and it's also at the height of some of the track competition.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to live continuous coverage of the bomb blast in Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta. A bomb blast in the middle of a concert going on in the park. We understand that at least 1 to 4 people are confirmed dead, and up as many as to 200 people injured. We're talking with the Austin American-Statesman's Kirk Bowles and also with the 590 KLBJ radio news team. We'll join ABC coming up in about 4 minutes, live at the top of the hour.
Yeah, it brings back memories when they bombed the Olympics. And there was like a manhunt for years to catch the guy who actually did it. But they prosecuted the wrong guy. Remember Richard Jewell?
I really don't. I don't recall.
Really?
No.
Yeah. The FBI told us he'd done it. He was like Lee Harvey Oswald. Turns out he didn't. They had the wrong guy, and they had to search for years. I forget the name of the man who actually did the bombing. But yeah, that was.
But did you have like Frankenstein's monster in the back room with all the big dials and things, on your equipment? Like,
yes. Do you see that old board that I had in one of those pictures, with the knobs that were as big as your hand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That board was from the 1960s.
Yeah, I learned on an audio board like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Me too. Worked on them for years. They built those things to last. It's not like the technology of today where we have to get a new laptop every year because the old one is obsolete. Nope. Back then, man, you were working with a microphone from 1965 and a board from 1961, and by golly, it still worked. They didn't get rid of those things until the 90s when you saw some primitive computers start to creep into newsrooms. You could see in some of those pictures the old desktop computers that we had, big old monitors, this big.
Yeah.
And they were quite temperamental, as I recall.
I remember people losing their jobs because those computers came in and they just could not figure it out.
They
could not figure. There was a sports guy who shall remain nameless. Mm-hmm. I even tried to help him myself, and he just could not figure out how to save a file.
Yeah, just couldn't get the hang of it.
No, he was just too old.
That's right. And also, a lot of jobs in our industry were lost, well, for a couple of reasons. And this is where the death of journalism really begins to happen. In 1996, that same year that we were just listening to, that's when President Clinton put through the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which essentially consolidated media into the hands of 5 or 6 mega corporations. And those corporations still own almost every radio and television station in America today. But back then, because they were consolidating, what do big companies want to do? They want to increase their bottom line. And how do you do that? You cut jobs. And thanks to this new computer technology, they could do that because you could pre-record in advance and put the darn thing on autopilot. So they did what we called voice tracking. And it was where a disc jockey or a news person like me would record my newscast. Instead of doing it live, I'd be recording news for the overnight shift and into the next day, and it would run on autopilot. So you just hope that no breaking news happens overnight while everybody's home asleep. There was nobody manning the newsroom after that in the hours, say, between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. when the morning show started. So what happened that night, that kind of breaking news coverage that we brought you, we also covered TWA, Flight 800, when it blew up in that same year, I think. That happened late at night, and we had to come on the air, right, with this breaking news. But after that, they cut a lot of jobs because it only took one guy to voice track 24 hours worth of programming. And they just put it on autopilot and the computer would run it. And that's how most radio stations to this day are run. Your local radio station in your town is probably running programming that was recorded in Chicago or Detroit or some other city, and it was recorded in advance. So it's not really live.
Did you know even movie theaters run that way now?
Oh, no. There's no live projectionist up in the booth?
They have like central servers. Oh. The files are sent out to the theaters. Yeah, it's all digital.
No, I didn't know that. I can't say as I'm surprised. So there's a lot of out-of-work projectionists, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they still have a projector, obviously, but it's all sort of remote control, and they have files, right? Just video files, and they run them.
Wow. That is
not like the old days. Have you ever seen like an actual movie projector? Like because they had like these rods that would go down in, and they're basically a welding rod, right? And then they just burn that rod, which is almost as bright as the sun, right? And you'd have these big reels, but it's not like that anymore.
Wow. So much has changed, Rick.
Sure
so much has changed.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.